would you prefer us to call you Bryan or Beller?
Bryan, please.
You can call me Bryan too if you want.
Olá, escolas progressivos! Hoje estamos aqui na edição especial Baixistas. E a gente está com um convidado especial, que é o Bryan Beller do Aristocrats. So say hello to Brazil, Bryan.
Hello, Brazil!
We are so happy that you made some time to talk to us. And we are a little bit nervous because the last person that talked to us was Robert Fripp, and he got us this shirt.
Oh yeah.
So I know all the Brazilian fans are really excited. So the first thing we want to know, because we've seen many teasers from the album, the new album that's coming up, and there are some things that are pretty different from the Tres Caballeros album. What's the transition between the Tres Caballeros album and this one?
Well, all of the songs are different anyway. I mean, like, we change styles from song to song on every album. I don't know. I mean, if you go song by song on Tres Caballeros, you have the first song, which is a heavy rock song, and then which is Stupid 7. The next song is Jack's Back, which is kind of a strange little quirky Guthrie song, and then Texas Crazypants, which is very kind of American Stevie Ray Vaughan. First three songs on You Know What are D-Grade Fuck Movie Jam, which is a very kind of hard blues rock kind of song. And then the second song, again, is a kind of a quirky Guthrie song, Spanish Eddie, has a lot of different parts in it. And then the third song is a bluegrass song, When We All Come Together, that Marco wrote. So I think maybe it's not as different as you think. Now, we did record it at a different studio in Ojai, California, at a place called Brethren Studios, which is really, really nice. And I think we got better drum sounds and better guitar sounds, especially some of the guitar sounds are really, really nice. So it could be that it's a difference in the way we recorded it makes the vibe feel different. But really, more than anything, it's just us saying, hey, here we are again, 9 more songs, that could be anything.
You said like you're going through many different genres of music. Is it a prog rock album?
Well, it's so broad now. Progressive is almost anything. To me, prog is more dedicated to the idea that there is really a song form and a structure, but it's more complex than a typical pop song, and the melodies and the arrangements and the harmonic content is a little bit more unusual than you would have in a typical pop song. Now, the irony is, of course, if you listen closely to all of these 6.5-minute instrumental songs, you can hear a traditional song structure in there. Verse, pre-chorus, chorus. They're there, but they just require a little bit more attention to kind of dig them out. And I think that's the secret with a lot of progressive music, actually.
But is it a prog album?
Is it a prog album? I don't think it's a pure prog album.
What would that be, a pure prog album?
There's something about the kind of progressive music that I like, which is kind of the darker things. And Pink Floyd is a darker progressive band than, say, Genesis or Yes. It just feels darker, mostly because I think of Roger Waters' lyrical content and his overall vibe, but also because David Gilmour is not trying to do a lot of things on the guitar. He's just trying to do one thing really well. I also think that 9 Inch Nails is the kind of progressive music that I really like. And some people would say 9 Inch Nails is not prog, but that's not true. I think that they are. I think, of course, the timbre is industrial and aggressive, and some metal, hard rock, but I think what he's trying to do is very progressive.
It's really hard to define what prog is.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the density and the complexity of the arrangement. I think that's a key defining characteristic of progressive music. And then at that point, it becomes more about sound than arrangement. You know, because progressive metal will have a certain kind of sound. Progressive rock, classic progressive rock, has a certain kind of sound. And then progressive pop, what about progressive pop? Like XTC is a progressive pop band. Basically what they did was they took the things that the Beatles were doing and then added all sorts of really interesting arrangement and intricacies on top of it. Some people would call it smart pop. Because we know that all progressive music is really smart, right? Here, look, I'll show you. So when I say that progressive music is very smart, I have to do this.
Oh, now you look more prog. You're like Professor Snape.
Professor Snape? I really? Harry Potter is so prog. So back to the album. Okay, I'll just say that some songs are more progressive than others. Like some songs are kind of rock, really rock fusion. Like Guthrie's song "Terrible Lizard" is really a heavy rock fusion song. Marco's song "Burial at Sea" is very, very progressive, and as soon as you listen to it, you just know, you can just feel it. It's just got so many senses of King Crimson, maybe a little bit of Steven Wilson, and then the atmospheric stuff is almost like a little Genesis. There's a lot of little progressive elements that are going on in that song. The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde, which is a song that I wrote, is like progressive instrumental rock, but just as a trio. It's got a very long song form. It takes 7.5 minutes. It just has a progressive feel to it. You feel like you've been on a long journey by the time it's over. Depends on the song.
We are fans of solo albums, and we are very interested in some releases from bass players too, right? Like Squire. Is it more difficult, I mean, for you as a bass player to create a whole concept album, or do you play all the instruments? How does it work?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought up Chris Squire, because I think that his album, Fish Out of Water, is really the gold standard for a solo album by a bass player in a progressive band. And I know a lot of people who are Yes fans who think that that album is as good or better than the Yes albums that were coming out in that era. It's a really great album. When I write the demos, you know, I am a keyboard player. I grew up playing piano as my first instrument, so I have no problem with the keyboards. That's okay. And then the drums, they make it very easy to program drums, and I am actually interested in the drums because I wanted to be a drummer when I was a child, but my parents said no. You know, I always looked at bass as a very, very cool way to provide a foundation, a key foundation in the band, because the bass is the bridge between the harmony content and the rhythm content. Only the bass sits in between these two things. So it's a very powerful instrument in that way. But this album isn't about the bass at all. This bass is just one part of these very, very big, lavishly arranged compositions. So I'm not a good guitar player, but I'm good enough to make a demo. So then I play the guitar in the demo. Some of the parts I got better as I went on, and I ended up keeping some of them. So a lot of my rhythm guitar parts are on the album. But in the end, this is the important bit since we're talking about prog. My favorite albums when I was growing up were the big progressive double concept albums. And the first album I ever owned was The Wall when I was 9 years old. And that and Yes's Tales from Topographic Oceans was a big album for me. Like I said, 20 years later, 9 Inch Nails put out an album called The Fragile, which is a double album. I was afraid, I think, to make the album I always really wanted to make. And I always wanted to make a double concept progressive album, but it's such a big job to write 88 minutes of music, 18 songs, and then think of the compositions, not just inside the compositions, but the melodies that go through the different songs on the album that tie the album together. And little by little, I started calling the people that I knew to play on the album. So there was one song that just felt like it had to have Joe Satriani, because the song was screaming for his kind of melodic and tonal approach on the guitar. So there's a song called Volunteer State, it's a straight ahead rock song, but it's got a lot more guitar layers on it than a typical Joe Satriani song. So he came in and he played the melody and he added some acoustic guitars and he played banjo and he did all sorts of crazy things on it, and it sounds amazing. Then there's another song which is inspired by, you know, Indian music, which is 9 minutes long, and it's near the end of the album. It's a big climactic piece. It's called World Class. I thought to myself, okay, this really, really intricate kind of very fast, difficult guitar part. I asked John Petrucci if he would do it because I felt like he would just be perfect for it. And he said yes, but he said, I'm recording the new Dream Theater album right now. And so I can't really learn the whole 9-minute song. I can contribute a solo. And so I thought, that's great, you do that. And then I found another guitarist, a woman named Neely Brosh, who is a really, really great guitarist. And I know her from Berklee College of Music, and I know that she can play technical stuff like this really, really well. And she's Israeli, so she has kind of a flavor for some of the other world music I was bringing into this song. And the drummer on that song is Ray Hearn from Haken. I could go on and on about this, but there's other songs that have kind of like a prog metal feel to them. Like one of them maybe feels a little bit like a Devin Townsend song, where I was really, it's almost like an homage to Devin a little bit. And I got Gene Hoglan to play drums on it. Then there's a very sensitive guitar ballad in the end of the album, which is kind of majestic and a little sad at the same time. And it's the kind of thing that Guthrie Govan does really, really well. So I asked Guthrie to do that, and he performed, and he played an amazing solo on this song. The classic double albums always have a very elaborate package and interesting artwork. So here's the cover. There are two 20-page booklets, and each song has its own image. So is that prog? I think that's very prog. So I unapologetically and proudly, I say this is a progressive concept double album. And I always wanted to make it, and it took me 3 years, and finally it's done.
So Bryan, while you were talking about both albums, I was wondering, what's the real difference in the way you guys compose things in groups and the way you compose your own songs? I mean, I don't know. You have separate songs that there are 3.
We each write 3.
9 songs, as I said. Do you wake up and say, okay, I'm gonna compose the Aristocrats song now, and then you compose? Oh, really? It's a real question. I really want to know that.
I think that it's different for every one of the band members. I don't want to speak for Marco and Guthrie, but I do know that Marco has said that he is constantly writing material and he doesn't know where it's going to go. So that's Marco's process. I think Guthrie and I are different. When we are writing, we know that we're writing for the Aristocrats or we're writing for a solo album. I know I do. With the Aristocrats, it's the most important thing is to have fun with it. So, for example, the song D-Grade Fuck Movie Jam, like, where does that come from? It comes from someone who was reviewing our concert. So D-Grade's very bad, a very bad fuck movie, so that's porno, jam song. So basically he said that we were writing really bad music for pornos. And so I thought to myself, first of all, fuck you. And second of all, that's a really good line, so I want to use it for a song. We start sending emails to each other. We say, okay, I have one. Here's one. That's how it works. We're just writing by ourselves, and then we send via email. We send the demo to the other guys, and we try and write about things that have at least a decent story and can be fun.
Why do you think the songs fit in together? It's not that easy to make something that makes sense, like when you put it all together.
Well, we don't always know how that is going to sound while we're doing the writing. But we trust each other that when we put it all together, that somehow it will work, because it always sounds like us when we play it.
Could you give us an example of a non-prog album that some people might consider prog, and when you listen to it, you might consider it prog too, but in the end, it's non-prog, but you're not really sure?
Mastodon, Crack the Sky.
Is Pink Floyd prog? Is Pink Floyd prog?
Is Pink Floyd prog? That's a great question. I think that they belong in the progressive genre, but there's a reason why Pink Floyd sold so many more albums than all the other progressive bands. And it's because their emotional content is more accessible than the other prog bands. Do I think Pink Floyd is progressive? Yes, I do.
Do you know the game Kill, Fuck, Marry?
Yes.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer, please.
I'll kill the drummer. I kill the drummer. Always kill the drummer. I think I would I'd probably fuck Keith Emerson, and then I would marry Greg Lake.
Excellent. All right, and another one. What is the best Yes album, and why is it Yes from 1969?
I really love the album Relayer, and it's such a strange thing. Gates of Delirium is such an incredible composition, and I mean, like, I think that's probably my favorite Yes song from start to finish.
Okay, so another one. Which album would you be buried with? You can choose only one.
Buried with? It's funny because, like, I would say The Wall, but I don't listen to The Wall anymore. Right now, if they told me what album could I be buried with, I'd say bury me with this, because everything you need to know about me is in that album.
Yeah.
All right, Beller, Bryan. I don't know why I said Beller because you said. I'm sorry.
Can I just have just another question? Besides The Wall, what's your favorite Pink Floyd album?
Animals. Animals.
You got all the questions correctly, and you passed 150 points.
A grade.
Yeah.
A grade.
Thank you so much for participating with us. And we just loved all your answers. You surprised us very much. I am waiting for my Aristocrats shirt. This one is from the last tour.
I can see you both need new shirts, so we will start a charity.
Thank you, Bryan, so much. I promise I won't put anything really compromising the editing, or not.
Just
like
for
that.
us, everything.
Yes, we're always in bed.
That's the test. That's the test.
Sanduíche de queijo, depois do sanduíche eu quero beijo.